I recently heard a pastor by the name of Johnston say this: the greatest thing you can do for God is just be who He created you to be. And from what I can see, many people in the church today are trying to be somebody they're not. And I confess that was my story until very, very recently. In the beginning of 2017, I was working at a church here in the Bay Area, and I knew very clearly that my time here was up. I had a few job offers on the table, and though I was extremely thankful and humbled by them, none of them truly excited me. Or to use Christian language, I didn't feel peace about them. In all honesty, this really confused me. One night, my wife and I were out to dinner with some of our best friends, and we were talking about all of this. About halfway through the conversation, my friend made the following observation. He said, "Caleb, ever since I met you 3 years ago, you've talked about two things consistently: teaching and writing. And every time you tell me your life plan, it always consists of a 10 to 20-year stint of being a senior pastor, but it always ends with you being a professor, a speaker, and a writer. Why not just go for that now?" I did a nervous laugh and wrote it off as idealistic, but then his wife chimed in and asked a surprisingly astute question. She asked, "Do you feel pressure to be a senior pastor?" As silly as it sounds, I had never thought of this before. Throughout my entire life, everyone had told me I'd be a great senior pastor, so I assumed that was my divinely inspired destiny. My dad was a senior pastor growing up, so it ran in the family. I started preaching to friends and family when I was 10 years old, so it sort of ran in my blood too. But for the next few months, that conversation we had with friends was all I could think about. I began to see that there was more truth and validity to their comments and observations than I had actually realized. Unknowingly, I had repressed a big part of who I was. You see, I would rather read literature than watch Netflix. I would rather talk about philosophy than the Warriors game. And one of the pastors I used to work for would actually make fun of me for this. So the longest time, I felt awkward, even embarrassed by what I would refer to as my nerdy side. But I began to realize that God loved my nerdy side, and He actually and intentionally created me with it. It was the beginning of God freeing me to become everything that He had created me to be, rather than everything people were telling me I should be. It sounds elementary, even comical perhaps, to say that as a 26-year-old then, I finally felt the freedom to be myself. But it was the most beautiful and empowering realization. It was at this time that I actually enrolled at Fuller to pursue my academic dreams. It was also at this time that I stepped out of my financially comfortable job to be a part of a church plant, just because I love the pastors I now work with. I no longer feel pressure to have to be the next Rick Warren, Craig Rochelle, or Brian Houston. I just feel freedom to become everything that God's created me to be. And I have to admit, I don't know exactly what this looks like yet, but there's an excitement in the mystery of it all. Undoubtedly, I have big goals and big dreams, and I serve a God who, as Scripture tells us, is able to do far beyond anything we could ask or imagine. But at the end of the day, as David once prayed in the Psalms, Psalm 31, in fact, my future is in God's hands. And I have to say, there is so much peace and excitement in that.